I cooked every holiday meal for 12 years, hunched over the oven while the family toasted in the living room. Tonight, they texted that the table was full. No room for my autistic daughter, but they still expected me to cook as always. I put the spoon down, opened my laptop, and started a list nobody in the family saw coming. Receipts, texts, proof, and a Christmas plan that didn't require an invitation. My name is Grace Whitlow. I am 34 years old, and for the last decade, my life has been measured in the beep of heart monitors and the sterile, sharp scent of antiseptic. I sat motionless in the driver's seat of my 10-year-old sedan, the engine off, the silence of the Riverside Beacon medical staff parking lot, broken only by the faint whistle of wind moving snow across the asphalt. It was Cleveland. It was December. And the cold was a physical weight. The snow wasn't the clean, fluffy kind from Christmas cards. It was wet, heavy, and gray, sticking to the windshield in icy clumps. The smell of the hospital clung to me, woven into the fabric of my navy blue scrubs. It was the smell of industrial cleaner, latex, and the faint, metallic tang of blood, a perfume I could never quite wash out. My dashboard clock glowed a weak digital green. 8:17 p.m. My shift had ended 17 minutes ago, but I hadn't found the energy to turn the key. My bones ached. It wasn't just the fatigue from a 12-hour night shift spent running, lifting, and holding a stranger's hand as their world ended. It was a deeper exhaustion, a weariness that had settled into my marrow. My thoughts were entirely on my daughter, Nora, my sweet, brilliant, 8-year-old girl, who saw the world in patterns and colors I could only guess at. She would be home with Mrs. Klein, our neighbor, probably lining up her dinosaur figures in perfect chronological order on the living room rug. The thought of her, of walking in and feeling her small arms wrap around my legs in her specific, intense way, was the only thing pulling me forward. I just needed a minute. 1 minute of silence before the drive home, before the transition from Nurse Whitlow back to Mom. My phone, sitting screen down in the cup holder, vibrated. The buzz was harsh against the plastic, startling me. I sighed, assuming it was a query from the incoming shift, a question about a patient's fluid levels or a missing chart. I picked it up. It wasn't the hospital. It was the Whitlow family group chat. My stomach tightened. It was never good news. It was always a request, a demand disguised as a question, a problem only I could solve. I opened the thread. The last message was from my mother, Marjorie. It landed with the casual force of a wrecking ball. Hi, everyone. Big news. Sabrina's fiancé, Cole, is bringing his parents in from Dallas for Christmas. They're lovely. We're all having dinner at Sabrina's new place. It's going to be a tight squeeze with the new dining set. Grace, honey, the table is just full. There won't be room for you and Nora this year. Hope you understand. I read it twice. The words seemed to blur, the green glow of the dashboard clock pulsing at the edge of my vision. No room. The cold in the car suddenly felt different. It wasn't just outside. It was inside me. A sharp, icy prickle spreading from my chest outward. I could feel my breath hitching, clouding the windshield in a dense fog, obscuring the snowy lot. Before I could even process the first blow, the phone buzzed again, a second message from Marjorie, sent exactly 1 minute after the first. You're still cooking, though, like every year. I'll send you the grocery list tomorrow. Sabrina wants that prime rib you do, and Cole's mother is gluten-free, so you'll need to figure out a separate dessert for her. I stared at the screen, the polite, dismissive cruelty of it. There is no room for you, but there is room for your labor. And then, as if to complete the trifecta of familial entitlement, a third bubble popped up. This one from my father, Dean. While you're at it, Gracie, remember to pre-order that new Apple Watch for me, the Series 9, the blue one. Thanks, kiddo. My hand was shaking, not a tremble, but a violent, uncontrollable shake that made the phone rattle against my steering wheel. A sound, half sob, half laugh, tore out of my throat. It was the sound of something snapping. The fog on the windshield was opaque now. The car, My only moment of privacy between the chaos of the hospital and the responsibilities of home suddenly felt like a coffin. I was suffocating. The antiseptic smell was choking me. 12 years. For 12 years, I had been the invisible chef of the Whitlow family. It started when I was 22, just out of nursing school. My mother had declared herself too stressed to handle Thanksgiving, and Sabrina, already in her first year of law school, was too busy building her future to be expected to baste a turkey. So I did it. And I never stopped. I did the Thanksgiving bird, glistening and perfect, while they watched football. I did the 7-fish feast for Christmas Eve, a tradition I hated but Marjorie insisted on. I did the glazed ham for Easter, the catering-level spreads for Sabrina's graduation parties, the birthday cakes, the anniversary dinners. My holidays were spent sweating in front of an open oven, my arms cross-hatched with faint white burn marks, listening to the sound of my family's laughter and clinking glasses from the dining room. I was the engine, hidden away in the kitchen, fueling their perfect, effortless gatherings. And I paid for it, not just in time and sweat, but in cash. I bought the groceries, the specialty ingredients, the expensive cuts of meat, brushing it off as my contribution. My mind flashed to a specific memory, sharp and cold as an icicle. The day Nora was diagnosed. We were in a sterile beige office, and Nora, then 4, was happily and quietly stacking colored blocks on the floor, not responding to the specialist's questions. The doctor had been kind, using words like neurodivergent and sensory processing. I had driven my mother home afterward, my mind reeling, my heart aching with a terrified, protective love. I'd needed my mom. Instead, Marjorie had stared out the passenger window, her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. "Well," she'd said finally, her voice tight with disapproval, "you are not to tell anyone. We don't need that label. Just teach her to be polite. Teach her to sit still and make eye contact. It's just a matter of discipline. Grace, don't let her be strange. Don't let her be strange. Teach her to be polite." The fog on my windshield began to clear, and with it came a clarity that was blinding. I looked back at my mother's text. The table is just full. It was a lie. It was always a lie. Sabrina had a 6-bedroom house in the suburbs. She had an extendable dining table that could seat 14. This wasn't about a lack of chairs. They were ashamed of Nora, my daughter, who hummed when she was happy and flapped her hands when she was excited. My daughter, who might not make eye contact with strangers, who might need to wear her noise-canceling headphones, who might need to excuse herself if the perfume and the loud talking became too much. She wasn't polite, she wasn't normal, she was strange, and there was no room for her at their perfect table, especially not in front of Cole's wealthy Dallas family. But there was room for my prime rib. There was room for my gluten-free tort. There was room in my budget for my father's new watch. My thumb hovered over the phone app. The reflex, ingrained over 34 years, was overwhelming. Call Mom. Apologize. Smooth it over. Don't make waves. I could hear my own voice in my head, a weak, pleading version of myself. "Oh, Mom, don't worry about it. Nora and I can eat in the kitchen. It's no problem at all. Of course I'll still cook. What kind of prime rib were you thinking?" I would apologize for my daughter's existence. I would apologize for taking up space. My thumb moved, but not to the call icon. I pressed the red end button on the screen, killing the call before it even began. It was the first time I had not immediately moved to fix, to soothe, to placate. A new feeling was spreading through my chest, hot and heavy, pushing out the ice. It wasn't just anger, it was rage. A clean, righteous rage that burned away the fog. My mind, which had been so sluggish in weary moments before, was now sharp. It was running calculations, pulling up files, seeing the last 12 years not as a series of loving sacrifices, but as a long, meticulously documented history of exploitation. The quiet in the car was no longer peaceful. It was the silence of a breaker being thrown, the silence of a system shutting down, rebooting into something new. Something dangerous. I stuck the key in the ignition. The engine turned over with a low growl. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the falling snow. I wasn't driving home to cry. I wasn't driving home to call my sister and beg. I was driving home to open my laptop. I was driving home to start a new grocery list. One that didn't involve a prime rib. One that involved receipts and screenshots and a long overdue invoice. They wanted a traditional Christmas. They were about to get a reckoning. I pulled out of the parking lot, my hands steady on the wheel for the first time all night. The apartment was silent when I got home. Nora was asleep in her room, her small form a peaceful lump under her weighted dinosaur blanket. Mrs. Klein, our elderly neighbor, was dozing in the armchair. The television muted. I paid her, adding an extra 20 for the late hour, and locked the door behind her. The quiet was heavy. The only light came from the small bulb over the kitchen sink, casting a sterile, fluorescent glow that reminded me of my workstation at the hospital. It felt less like a kitchen and more like an autopsy table. I didn't change out of my scrubs. The smell of antiseptic, of nitrile gloves and sterile saline, was my armor. I went to the junk drawer by the phone, a drawer crammed with old mail, appliance warranties, and half-used batteries. I pulled out the accordion file labeled Receipts. I went to the hall closet and dug out the heavy metal lockbox where I kept our important documents. I dumped the contents onto my small laminate kitchen table. It was an avalanche of paper, flimsy, faded receipts from grocery stores, credit card statements going back 3 years, bank logs. I spread them out, the edges overlapping, until the entire surface was a mosaic of my own servitude. I sat down, booted up my laptop, and opened my online banking portal. I opened my email. I opened the text message threads on my phone, setting it beside the computer. I was no longer Grace, the tired nurse, the worried mother. I was an auditor. I was an archaeologist, carefully brushing the dirt off the bones of my past. The work was methodical. I started with the text messages, scrolling back and back and back. The sheer volume of requests was suffocating. I took screenshots of the most blatant ones. From my mother, Marjorie. Last Easter. Grace, I know you're exhausted from that double shift, but I simply don't know how I would manage the ham without you. You're a lifesaver. What would I do without you? From my father, Dean. 6 months ago. Gracie, the guys at the club are all getting those new rangefinders. I know things are tight, but From my sister, Sabrina. Just before her engagement party. Hey, just checking in. How are you? How's my favorite little niece? Listen, quick favor. Cole's parents are dying to try that tiramisu you make. The real one. Could you maybe whip up enough for 50? You are the absolute best. The concern was always the appetizer. The favor was the main course. The expectation was the bill I always paid. I cross-referenced the texts with my bank statements. The pattern was undeniable. A text from Marjorie, followed 2 days later by a credit card charge. Whole Foods, $482.15. That was Thanksgiving. Another text from Sabrina, followed by The Good Butcher, $312. That was her quick favor backyard barbecue. I opened a new spreadsheet. I didn't title it. I just started creating columns. Date, item, beneficiary, cost. It wasn't just the food. It was the gifts. The endless, obligatory gifts. The new laptop for Dad's birthday. The spa weekend for Mom's. The absurdly expensive crystal bowl from Sabrina's bridal registry. The cash I'd slipped into my father's hand when he'd miscalculated his monthly budget. A regular occurrence. The gift baskets. The flower arrangements. The wine. I kept typing. The clicks of the keys the only sound in the dark apartment. I pulled my hospital scheduling logs. I found the dates I'd taken unpaid leave. Not for my own sickness. Not for Nora's. I'd lost 3 shifts, 3 shifts of pay, in August alone to drive my father to his physical therapy appointments for his bad back. Sabrina, who lived 10 minutes from my parents, was swamped at the firm. I, the single mother working night shifts, was apparently the one with the flexible schedule. After 2 hours, The spreadsheet was a damning document. I highlighted the final column and clicked the sum function. The number glowed on the screen. $11,740. That was my contribution to the Whitlow family in the last 12 months alone. $11,740. I stared at it until the numbers blurred. That was Nora's therapy fund. That was the down payment on a small house with a yard, the one I dreamed of so she could have a sensory garden. It was my emergency fund, my car repair fund, my future, and I had handed it over, one prime rib and one quick favor at a time. My investigation deepened. I went to my email. I searched for a message from my aunt from last spring. I found it. The subject line read, "Marjorie is just amazing." Attached was a photo from a local charity luncheon. My mother, Marjorie, stood beaming in a pale blue suit, accepting a small plaque. The caption praised her for her generous and tireless contributions to the annual fundraising bake sale. It specifically mentioned her famous family recipe lemon ricotta cakes. My grandmother's recipe? I had found that recipe on a food blog 8 years ago. I was the one who had stayed up until 3 in the morning after a double shift, baking 14 of those cakes. I was the one who had bought the pounds of imported ricotta, the organic lemons, the almond flour. My mother's only contribution had been to drive them to the luncheon and accept the applause. The cold fury I'd felt in the car returned, but it was different now. It was heavier, slower. This wasn't a flash fire. It was permafrost. I pushed away from the laptop, the chair scraping loudly on the linoleum. I needed to see the origin. I went to the hall closet and pulled out the old, dusty photo albums from the bottom shelf. I flipped through the plastic-covered pages, past my own gap-toothed school photos, past Sabrina's soccer trophies. I stopped at a picture that had always made me feel a quiet, hollow sadness. My 12th birthday. I was standing right here, in this same kitchen. Though the countertops were a hideous avocado green, I was a skinny, awkward kid with frizzy hair. In my hands, I held a spatula thick with chocolate frosting. On the counter in front of me was a lopsided, slightly scorched cake. I remembered that day. It was the first birthday after my father had lost his big sales job. Money was tight. My mother had declared that morning that she had one of her sick headaches and was going to bed. My father was out, looking for leads. Sabrina was at a friend's house. I had waited all day. No one called. No party materialized. By 6 o'clock, I realized no one had even bought a cake. So I had gone into the kitchen, found a box of brownie mix, we didn't even have cake mix, and made it myself. I'd found a can of vanilla frosting in the back of the pantry and mixed it with cocoa powder to make it chocolate. My father had come home just as I was finishing, seen me with the spatula, and laughed. He'd snapped this photo. "Atta girl, Gracie," he'd said, ruffling my hair. "Always holding down the fort. What a trooper." I wasn't a trooper. I was a 12-year-old girl, frosting her own birthday cake while her mother sulked in the next room. I closed the album, a small puff of dust exploding in the quiet. That was it. That was the moment my role was cemented. Sabrina was the smart one, the ambitious one. Marjorie was the delicate one, the one to be protected. Dad was the provider, even when he wasn't. And I was the trooper, the helper, the one who got things done. A sentence formed in my mind, as sharp and clear as a shard of glass. In their eyes, I am a blood-related servant. The realization didn't make me want to scream. It made me want to weep, not for the anger, but for the sheer, staggering waste of it all. The tears finally came, hot and silent, dripping onto the sleeve of my scrubs. I was mourning. I was holding a funeral for the years I had lost, for the person I could have been if I hadn't been so busy propping up everyone else. A funeral for the delusion that if I just tried hard enough, cooked one more perfect meal, bought one more expensive gift, they would finally see me. They would finally love me. They would finally make room for my daughter. But you don't make room at the table for the appliance. I wiped my face. The crying stopped as abruptly as it had begun. The grief solidified into resolve. I sat back down at the laptop. My movements were no longer sad. They were clinical. I opened a new tab. I went to my secure cloud storage, the encrypted drive where I kept copies of my nursing license and Nora's medical records. I created a new folder. I titled it Family Ledger. I gave it a complex 20-character password. One by one, I began to upload the evidence, the screenshots of the text messages, the scanned grocery receipts, the digital bank statements, with the relevant charges highlighted in yellow, the photo of Marjorie and her family recipe cake, and finally, the spreadsheet, the $11,740. I created one last document inside the folder, a simple text file. I named it Exploitation Timeline. I started writing, age 12, assumes responsibility for own birthday celebration due to maternal headache. Age 22, assumes full responsibility for all holiday catering. Tradition established. Age 28, becomes default family driver and errand runner following father's back injury, despite sister's closer proximity. Age 30, begins involuntarily funding family gifts and luxuries, becomes default financier. Age 34, services retained, but presence, and that of her child, deemed too much for the table. I watched the final file upload. The small green checkmark appeared. I closed the laptop. The kitchen was dark, but my mind was bright. The fog of obligation, of guilt, of desperate daughterly love had finally, blessedly, burned away. I woke up to sunlight. It was a strange, disorienting sensation. I lay still for a moment, my heart pounding, convinced I had overslept, that I had missed a shift, that I had failed someone. Then I realized what was missing. The alarm. I had not been woken by the jarring, pre-dawn buzz of my phone. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I had not set my 6:15 in the morning confirm menu alarm. There was no shopping list waiting to be finalized, no menu to be confirmed, no temperature calculation for a 20-pound turkey. The dread that usually sat on my chest in the mornings, the checklist of ingredients and demands, was absent. In its place, there was just quiet. I got up and padded into the kitchen. Nora was already awake, sitting at our small table in her dinosaur pajamas. She was not eating her cereal, but organizing it. She was meticulously arranging the brightly colored loops on her placemat, building perfect concentric circles, a red ring, then an orange, then yellow, all perfectly spaced. She was humming, a low, contented sound deep in her throat, a sign that her world was orderly and she was happy. I watched her for a full minute, my chest aching with a sharp, protective love. This was my world. This was the only table that mattered. This small, quiet, orderly circle of cereal, not the chaotic, screaming demands in the family group chat. I made a pot of coffee, my movements slow, and I smiled. It was the first genuine smile that had reached my eyes in days. The peace held until I was in my scrubs, lacing up my worn nursing shoes. Then the anxiety, the what-ifs, began to creep in. What if my mother calls the unit? What if she bypasses me and complains to my manager? What if she shows up, demanding to know why I am ignoring her? The old reflex to fix it, to smooth it over, was strong. I fought it down. Instead, I built my first wall. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Tiana, the charge nurse I shared most shifts with. She was a single mother, too, and she understood the trenches. I typed, my fingers stiff. Hey T, quick heads up. I'm navigating some serious family drama. If my mother, Marjorie Whitlow, calls the floor looking for me, could you please just tell her I'm in a critical situation or unavailable? I really need to keep work in this separate. I'll explain later. I hit send. It felt like dropping a heavy shield into place. Tiana's reply came back in less than a minute. Got you. G. The Whitlow wall is officially activated. You focus on patients. I'll handle the civilians. A small, tight knot in my chest loosened. One brick. At the hospital, my break was only 30 minutes. I didn't go to the cafeteria. I went to a quiet computer terminal in the charting room. I logged into the Riverside Beacon employee portal. I'd seen a flyer for it months ago, tacked to the bulletin board, but I'd always been too busy. I found the link, Employee Resource Groups. I clicked. A small drop-down menu appeared. Support Network for Parents of Neurodivergent Children. My hand hovered over the Join button. This was a public admission. This was accepting the label my mother had explicitly forbidden. Don't let her be strange. This was me, aligning myself, in writing, with Nora's reality. I clicked Join. A confirmation email appeared instantly. Welcome, Grace. Our next virtual meeting is this Tuesday at 7 p.m. I wasn't alone. While I was logged in, I clicked another link. Mental health resources. Our insurance covered 6 outpatient behavioral health sessions per year. I found the list of providers. Dr. Rowan. The name was familiar. She specialized in family systems and complex trauma. I filled out the secure intake form. Reason for visit. Seeking strategies for boundary setting and managing familial manipulation. I requested the first available appointment. I was treating my own life like a new admission. Assess the damage. Call in the specialists. I still had 10 minutes. I opened the secure family ledger file I had created. I made a new document inside it. I titled it, Demand versus Care. It was a simple 2-column list. Under the demand column, I typed, requires labor, is transactional, causes guilt when boundary is set, is inflexible, ignores my needs, e.g., sleep, finances, Nora's needs, is conditional. Under the care column, I typed, offers support, is reciprocal, respects boundaries, is flexible, acknowledges my needs, is unconditional. I started sorting the memories and the text messages. My father's watch. Demand. My sister's engagement tiramisu. Demand. My mother's emergency lemon cakes. Demand. The list in that column grew long. A stark, black and white accounting. The care column remained painfully, glaringly empty. I was closing the file when Dr. Alvarez, our chief of staff, walked into the charting room. He was a tall, imposing man who missed nothing, and he was carrying his requisite cup of black coffee. He glanced at my screen, then at my face. I must have looked haunted. Whitlow, he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried, you look like you're triaging the entire world. I flushed, feeling caught. Just a long shift. Doctor, thinking about logistics. He nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. A piece of advice my residency attending gave me, he said, not unkindly. It applies to life as much as it does to medicine. You cannot be the patient's primary caregiver and their doctor at the same time. You lose objectivity. You burn out. He looked at me pointedly, his gaze sharp. Boundaries are not a weakness. Grace, they are a clinical skill. Use them for yourself, or you are no good to anyone. He didn't wait for a reply. He just nodded once and walked out, leaving me with the echo of his words. A clinical skill. I was skilled at setting boundaries for my patients, protecting them from disruptive visitors, advocating for their rest, demanding quiet in the halls. I had just never applied that clinical skill to my own life. That evening, the world offered another small piece of evidence. I got home, my feet aching, and Mrs. Klein was waiting in the hallway as Nora ran inside. Grace, dear, she said, her voice like soft flannel. She held up a small, colorful flyer. I was at the library, and I saw this. They're doing a holiday train exhibit down at the Botanical Gardens. I know how Nora loves her trains. Oh, Mrs. Klein, that's so thoughtful, I said, my voice thick with a fatigue I couldn't hide. You're run ragged, child, she said, patting my arm. Her touch was gentle, not demanding. Listen, I'm completely free this Thursday, all day. Why don't you let me take Nora to see the trains? Just for a few hours. You go take a nap, go see a movie. Just breathe, no charge. I just love the company. I stared at her. I was so conditioned to anticipate the second half of an offer, the and in return, that its absence left me speechless. No strings, no quick favor attached. I couldn't possibly ask you to do that, I stammered. Nonsense, she said firmly. I'm not asking. I'm telling. It's decided. Thursday, 10 in the morning. You go be a person for a few hours, not just a nurse or a mom. I closed my apartment door, the flyer in my hand. My eyes burned. I walked to my laptop and opened the file. In the care column, I typed, Mrs. Klein, Thursday, 10 in the morning. The reinforcement from the outside world gave me the strength to do the next part. My phone had been on the counter, face down, since I got home. It had been vibrating intermittently, a low, angry buzz against the laminate. I could feel its presence from across the room, a small, toxic black box demanding my attention. I walked over to it. I didn't need to read the messages. I knew the pattern. First, confusion. Grace, did you get my text? Then, passive aggression. Sabrina needs to know about the dessert. Grace, please respond. Then, the outright demands. Grace, I'm trying to order Dad's watch, and the card you said you'd give me isn't here. Call me. I picked up the phone. I opened the group chat. The flurry of unread messages blurred before my eyes. I didn't read them. I pressed the info button at the top of the screen. I scrolled down. Mute notifications. My thumb hovered. This was the wire. Cutting it would set off the alarm. The conditioned guilt was suffocating. They need me. I'm being selfish. I'm tearing the family apart. I'm a bad daughter. The words were my mother's, but they were in my voice, a recording playing on a loop in my head. A clinical skill. I pressed the button. Mute for. I selected 24 hours, a test flight. The phone was silent. The house was silent, but my head was screaming. I walked into the bathroom and turned on the harsh fluorescent light. I stared at the woman in the mirror. She looked pale, exhausted, her eyes shadowed, her face terrified. Okay, I whispered to my reflection. The sound was too small, swallowed by the hum of the extractor fan. I stood up straight. I pulled my shoulders back, mimicking the posture of Dr. Alvarez. I forced myself to make eye contact with the woman in the glass. I am not cooking this year, I said. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat. I tried again, firmer. I am not cooking this year, and Nora and I will not be attending. The words hung in the sterile, tiled air. They sounded foreign, harsh, impossibly cruel. A wave of guilt, so profound it was physical, washed over me. It felt like icy water filling my lungs, making it hard to breathe. I saw my mother's face in my mind, her perfected look of disappointment, her lower lip trembling. I saw my father's hurt shrug, the "how could you" Gracie in his eyes. I saw Sabrina's righteous, cold anger. How could you do this to us? After all we've done for you. My hands gripped the edges of the porcelain sink, my knuckles white. I was shaking. They gave me a home. They paid for my first car. The logic faltered. The new, cold logic from the family ledger pushed back, shoving the guilt aside. When did they last ask about Nora's therapy? When did they last offer to watch her so I could sleep, without expecting a 3-course meal in return? The guilt didn't vanish. It was a phantom limb, an ache for something that was never really there, but it weakened. It was a familiar poison, and I was finally, after 34 years, building an antidote. The antidote was the truth. I looked in the mirror again. My eyes were still scared, but they were also cold. Nora and I will not be attending, I repeated. I am not cooking. I said it a third time, not to the mirror, but to the ghosts of my family. No, it was a complete sentence, and for the first time in my entire life, I believed it. My shift began with the familiar, controlled chaos of the post-op wing. The Whitlow wall, my digital boundary, had held for a day, but I knew my family. Silence was a vacuum they abhorred. I was charting on a patient, my focus entirely on their fluid intake and output. When I heard the voice, it was a voice engineered to cut through noise, to command attention in a crowded restaurant, to make department store clerks scurry. It was my mother's. I am looking for Nurse Whitlow, Grace Whitlow. It is a family emergency. I closed the patient's chart. Tiana, the charge nurse, met my eyes across the station. I gave her a small, tight nod. The wall is being breached. I walked out of the unit and toward the main lobby atrium, and there she was, Marjorie. She was not dressed for a hospital emergency. She was dressed for an acquisition. She wore a tailored camel hair coat, her large, expensive handbag looped in the crook of her elbow, her hair perfectly helmeted by hairspray. She looked like a hawk surveying a new territory, and she was tapping her foot impatiently on the polished terrazzo floor. Mike R., our head of evening security, was already there, standing with the relaxed posture of a man who has seen every kind of human drama and is impressed by none of it. "There you are," Marjorie snapped, her voice bouncing off the high ceilings. The entire lobby, a mix of visitors, staff, and patients in wheelchairs, went quiet. "I have been calling you for 24 hours. You are ignoring your family." I stopped a good 10 feet from her, keeping my hands clasped behind my back. I was Nurse Whitlow now, not Gracie. I was in my element, not hers. "Mom," I said, my voice low and steady, the voice I used to de-escalate combative patients. "You cannot be here. This is a secure floor. This is my workplace." "I am not here," she spat, her face flushing a dull, angry red. "I am here to find out what is wrong with you. You are rebelling. You are upsetting your father. You are ruining Christmas." The accusation hung in the sterile air. A volunteer pushing a book cart froze. A couple waiting for the elevator turned to stare. We were a play, and she had just delivered the opening monologue. Mike R. shifted his weight, a subtle movement that nonetheless drew focus. His voice was a calm, professional monotone. "Ma'am, I need you to lower your voice. Our staff are trying to work, and our patients are trying to rest." "This is my staff," Marjorie shot back, pointing at me. "I am her mother." "Mom," I said, my voice dropping even lower, forcing her to lean in and lose her audience. "This is not the place for this. You need to leave, now." Her eyes widened. I had never, in my entire life, failed to capitulate in public. I was not apologizing. I was not smoothing it over. I was not ashamed. I was stating a fact. She saw the audience watching, and she saw me, calm and immovable in my navy scrubs. She realized her first tactic, public shaming, had failed, so she pivoted. Her face crumpled into a mask of theatrical, maternal wounding. She put a hand to her chest. "Family," she announced, her voice trembling but still loud enough for the elevator bay to hear. "Family is supposed to come first. I taught her that. After everything we have done for her, this is how she repays us, by choosing this over her own family." It was a brilliant move, designed to paint me as the cold, heartless professional, the ungrateful daughter. I saw a woman in a pink parka look at me with disapproval. But this was a hospital, not a living room, and Mike R. was not family. He was security. He did not care about her feelings. He cared about procedure. He nodded, once, to 2 other guards who had materialized from the main entrance. They were younger, bigger, and wore the same expression of polite boredom. They didn't touch her. They simply stood on either side of her, creating an impassable barrier. "Ma'am," Mike said, his voice still flat, "you are causing a disturbance. You can wait in the main public atrium downstairs, or you can leave the building. You cannot stay here." The reality of the situation finally landed. Her audience was not on her side. The institution was not on her side. I was not on her side. Her power, her currency of guilt and obligation, was useless here. Marjorie's face hardened. The mask of the wounded mother dissolved, revealing the cold fury beneath. She pulled her coat tight. She looked directly at me, past the guards. "You will regret this, Grace," she whispered. It was not a threat of violence. It was a threat of inheritance, of exclusion, of emotional execution. Then she turned, her heels clicking angrily, and marched toward the elevators, the two guards flanking her at a respectful distance, an honor guard escorting a disgraced diplomat out of a foreign territory. I stood there until the elevator doors closed. The lobby noise slowly returned to its normal hum. Tiana appeared at my elbow, a cup of water in her hand. "Category 5 drama," she murmured. "You good?" "I think so," I said. My hands were shaking, a fine tremor from the adrenaline. "I held the line." "You did. Gee," she said. "Now go take 10. The rest of the shift was a blur. When I finally got my 30-minute break at 2 in the morning, I sat in the buzzing fluorescence of the empty cafeteria and looked at my phone. The digital assault had begun. First, I looked at social media. Sabrina had been busy. She had posted a photo from last Thanksgiving. It was a perfect, warm-toned image. The gleaming, 16-pound turkey I had roasted, the elaborate side dishes I had prepared, the table I had set. My father was at the head, raising a glass of wine. Marjorie and Sabrina were smiling, their arms linked. I, of course, was not in the photo. I had been the one taking it, my hands still stinging from the hot oven. Sabrina's caption read, "So excited to continue our beautiful, sacred family traditions this Christmas. Nothing is more important than family, honor, and remembering the sacrifices our parents made for us. So sad when some people forget what really matters." It was a masterpiece, a passive-aggressive press release to our entire extended social circle. It framed me as the villain, the ungrateful, memory-hold traitor, all without ever using my name. The comments were a sickening flood of "such a beautiful family," and "tradition is everything," and "you guys are the best." I felt a cold nausea roll through my stomach. She was a lawyer, and this was her opening argument. She was winning the court of public opinion before I had even been allowed to speak. I closed the app, my thumb shaking. Then I opened my email. The top message, sent at 1:45 in the morning, less than an hour after she had been escorted out of my hospital, was from Marjorie. The subject line, "Christmas list." I opened it. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like a fist against my ribs. It was as if the entire confrontation, the shouting, the security guards, the public humiliation, had never happened. There was no, "I'm sorry," there was no, "How could you?" There was just denial, a complete and terrifying denial of reality. It was a list of 12 items. 1. Prime rib, bone-in, 8 or 9 pounds. 2. French brandy. For the peppercorn sauce, not the cheap kind. 3. Gluten-free all-purpose flour, for Cole's mother. 4. Imported goat cheese, the kind with the ash rind. I read all 12 items. It was breathtaking. It was the most clarifying document I had ever read. I was not a daughter. I was an appliance, a high-end oven that had temporarily malfunctioned. She had been escorted out by security, and her response was to send me a shopping list. She was just trying to reboot me, to restore my factory settings. I did not delete the email. I forwarded it to my family ledger in the cloud. Then, with the clinical precision I use to chart a patient's decline, I went into my email settings. I created a new folder. I named it Family. I created a rule. All emails from Marjorie Whitlow, Dean Whitlow, or Sabrina Whitlow containing the keywords cook, help, urgent, list, shopping, or tradition were to skip my inbox and be filed directly into that folder. I hit Apply My Inbox, which had been filling with angry red flags, suddenly became clean. I drove home as the sky was turning a bruised gray. I checked on Nora, who was fast asleep, her weighted blanket pulled up to her chin. I sat on my sofa, the exhaustion of the night a physical weight. My phone, which I had left on the coffee table, buzzed. A text from my father. "Your mother is very upset. Grace, you need to call her. This has gone too far." Another buzz. An aunt. "Sabrina posted the most wonderful picture. You must be so excited for Christmas." Another. My mother. From a different number I did not recognize. "Did you get the shopping list? I need to know by noon." The phone was a live grenade. It was the delivery system for the guilt. the demands, the poison. I picked it up. I went to my mother's contact. I pressed block. A pop-up asked me to confirm. I confirmed. I went to Sabrina's contact. Block. Confirm. I went to my father's contact. My thumb hesitated. Dad. But his text was not, "Are you okay?" It was, "Your mother is upset." He was her enabler, her messenger. I blocked him. I blocked the unknown number. I blocked the aunt. I set the phone down. The buzzing stopped. The silence in the apartment was absolute. I fell asleep on the couch, still in my scrubs. When I woke up hours later, the room was bright with afternoon sun. Nora was on the floor, quietly building a train track. My first, panicked instinct was to check my phone for the barrage I had missed. I picked it up. The screen was black. There were no missed calls, no unread texts, no angry red bubbles demanding my time, my labor, my soul. For the first time in 12 years, no one was demanding a menu, or a favor, or an apology. I stood up. The apartment was quiet. I took a deep breath, and my lungs filled completely. Without the familiar weight of dread sitting on my sternum, I felt light. It was not peace, not yet. It was the strange, terrifying, exhilarating weightlessness of zero gravity. I had cut the tether, and I was finally completely floating free. The digital silence was a new, vast territory. After a lifetime of being on call for my family's emotional and logistical needs, the absence of the constant, buzzing demands left a strange, echoing void. I found myself with empty hours, my hands restless. One evening, with Nora asleep, I was scrolling aimlessly on my laptop, not looking for anything, just letting the blue light of the internet wash over me. A sponsored ad popped up, a garish, glittering banner of holiday colors. I usually ignored them, but this one caught my eye. Holiday magic on the rails. I almost scrolled past, but one word held me. Train. It was a last-minute package deal. 2 round-trip tickets on the overnight express from Cleveland to New York City, 2 nights in a hotel in Midtown, a block from the park, and, on Christmas Day, reservations for a full brunch at the hotel's famous restaurant. I clicked, idly, morbidly curious. The price was displayed in bold red numbers. It was astronomical. It was a sum of money I would never, ever dream of spending on something so frivolous. It was absurd. I let out a short, dry laugh. Then I paused. I opened the family ledger file on my laptop, the spreadsheet still glowing with its final, damning total. I did the math, my fingers flying across the calculator. The cost of the train tickets, the hotel, the brunch. It was almost to the dollar the exact amount I had spent on their Christmas last year. It was the prime rib. It was the imported brandy. It was the goat cheese, the spa gift certificate for Marjorie, the new golf shoes for Sabrina, and the Apple Watch for my father. This wasn't an expense. It was a reallocation. I was sitting on the Whitlow family Christmas fund, and I could either spend it on the ingredients for a meal I was not invited to, or I could spend it on this. My hand was shaking. I stared at the Book Now button. It pulsed slightly on the screen. I was asking no one for permission. I was checking no one else's schedule. I was not coordinating with Sabrina or checking my mother's social calendar. I was a 34-year-old woman, a critical care nurse, and I was about to book my first real vacation in my entire adult life. My finger moved, clicking the mouse. The screen refreshed. Congratulations, Grace, your holiday is confirmed. A wave of hot, bright, terrifying adrenaline surged through me. It wasn't just an escape, it was a plan. It was a destination. And Nora, my daughter, Nora didn't just like trains, she adored them. It was her deepest, most passionate interest. The one thing that could focus her bright, scattered mind for hours. This wasn't just running away. This was running toward her. The next day, my entire focus shifted. I didn't shop for groceries. I shopped for an adventure. I went online and ordered a brand new pair of noise-canceling headphones, bright red, her favorite color. They were the expensive kind, the ones that would mute the overwhelming, chaotic roar of the train station, the hiss of the hydraulics, the high-pitched squeal of the wheels. I went to an art store. I bought a new, thick-page sketch pad and a beautiful tin box of 100 colored pencils. She would draw the blurred landscapes, the cities we passed in the night. I bought sheets and sheets of stickers, holographic trains, puffy snowflakes, and, just because, a pack of dinosaurs. This was care. This was what real care looked like, not forcing her to be polite, not shaming her for her needs, but anticipating them, celebrating them, and building a world where she could be comfortable. The energy at the hospital had changed. The atmosphere around the nurses' station, usually thick with gallows humor and the smell of stale coffee, now had a new, conspiratorial buzz. I had only told Tiana, my charge nurse, about the confrontation. She, apparently, had told everyone else. I came in for my shift 3 days before Christmas, bracing for the usual pre-holiday stress, but there, on my charting terminal, was a large wicker basket. It was wrapped in clear cellophane and tied with a huge, glittering red bow. I stopped dead. Inside, I could see bags of kettle corn, juice boxes, a new picture book about the history of Grand Central Station, a small, soft travel pillow shaped like a dinosaur, and at least a dozen different fidget toys. A card was tucked into the side. On the front, someone had drawn a picture of a train with a nurse's cap. Inside, in a dozen different handwritings, were messages. We hope you and Nora have the rails maz you deserve. Love, the night crew. Send us a picture from the big city. Gee, you are our hero. Hold the line. I had to duck into the supply closet. I leaned my head against the cool metal of a shelf stocked with sterile saline and gauze, and I cried. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated shock. This was community. This was what it felt like when people saw your labor and, instead of demanding more, simply gave back. The support didn't stop. Later that night, Dr. Alvarez stopped me in the hallway, his face set in its usual neutral expression. "Whitlow," he said, his voice low, "my wife and I are having a small, early holiday dinner this Friday. Just quiet. We'd be honored if you and your daughter would join us." I was floored. "Doctor, that's so kind, but we couldn't possibly impose." "Nonsense," he said, adjusting his glasses. "I've been reading up on the Japanese Shinkansen. I have some questions for Nora about magnetic levitation. 7 o'clock. My wife makes a terrible prime rib. So you're safe." That Friday, we went. His house was quiet, filled with books and warm light. His wife, a kind woman with gentle eyes, greeted Nora not with a loud, invasive hug, but with a simple, soft, "Hello, Nora. I'm very glad you're here." At dinner, Dr. Alvarez leaned forward, not a hint of condescension in his voice. "Nora," he said, "I'm told you're the expert. Help me understand. How do they prevent lateral displacement on the maglev trains? I cannot seem to grasp the physics of it." Nora's eyes, which were usually downcast when meeting new people, shot up. She looked at him, and then, for 10 straight minutes, she spoke. She talked about electromagnets, about the difference between the German and Japanese models, about guideways and propulsion. He listened. He actually listened, nodding and asking intelligent follow-up questions. I sat there, my food untouched, watching my daughter be treated not as a burden or a problem or something to be fixed, but as an expert, as a person, as herself. I was not naive. I was a critical care nurse. I knew how to anticipate a crisis. The block on my phone was a temporary dam. The flood of my family's rage was building, and it would seek a new path. I was a strategist. I went to my laptop. I drafted 2 short, clinical emails. The first was to my unit administrator at the hospital. "I am informing HR that I am in the midst of a difficult private family separation. It is possible you may receive calls from relatives, Marjorie or Sabrina Whitlow, expressing concern for my mental stability or fitness for work. Please file these as what they are, manipulative tactics of harassment, and document them as such." The second was to Nora's school counselor. I am writing to inform you that I have severed contact with my estranged family. If you are contacted by anyone, Marjorie, Dean, or Sabrina Whitlow, regarding Nora's welfare, please know it is a retaliatory action. I request all such contact be documented and routed immediately through me. I hit send on both. I was setting my own clinical boundaries. Then I configured my phone. I activated the most severe Do Not Disturb setting. I allowed calls only from 2 numbers: the hospital's main switchboard and Nora's school. Everyone else, every aunt, every cousin, my father, my mother, went straight to a silent, unread voicemail box. I was building a firewall. The day before we left, I knocked on Mrs. Klein's door. I was wondering, I started, we're going out of town for a few days. Would you mind just grabbing our mail? Her face lit up with a conspiratorial smile. You're doing it, aren't you? You're taking that girl on an adventure. We are, I smiled. Good, she said, squeezing my arm. It's about time. Don't you worry about a thing. When I got back to my apartment, there was an envelope tucked under my door. No name. Inside was a simple card, the kind from a drugstore, with a picture of a single, snow-covered tree. Someone had written, in shaky, elderly script, "The first holiday is always the hardest, and then it gets better. Every year, it gets better." Tucked inside was a $50 gift card. I packed Nora's bag first. Her red headphones, her sketchbook, her dinosaurs, her favorite weighted blanket. Then I looked at my own suitcase. It was empty. My entire wardrobe consisted of gray scrubs and worn-out mom jeans. I took the gift card from Mrs. Klein, and I went to the mall. Just for an hour. I walked past the stores I usually shopped in. I found myself in a department store, in front of a rack of soft, beautiful sweaters. I saw one. It was a deep, rich forest green, a color of life, of things that grow, of go. I tried it on in the dressing room. The woman in the mirror looked different. She was tired. Yes, circles under her eyes. But her eyes were bright, determined. I did something I never do. I took a picture, a selfie. Nora had squeezed into the dressing room with me, and she made a silly face at the camera, her hands flapping in excitement. I was smiling, a real, actual smile. I bought the sweater. It was the first piece of clothing I had bought for myself in over 5 years. That night, as I zipped the last bag shut, I prepared one final thing. I went to my printer. I printed out the family ledger spreadsheet, the $11,740 in stark black and white. I printed the screenshots. My mother's "no room for you" text, Sabrina's passive-aggressive social media post, my father's demand for the watch, my mother's shopping list email, sent after she was kicked out of my hospital. I put them all in a large manila envelope. On top of the stack, I placed a single, handwritten letter. It wasn't angry. It was a contract. It outlined, in simple, non-negotiable terms, the conditions for any future contact. 1. A full written acknowledgement of their behavior. 2. An agreement to attend supervised family therapy. 3. Absolute unconditional respect and acceptance for Nora. This was my boundary suitcase. I would carry it with me. A physical manifestation of my resolve, ready for the next, inevitable confrontation. The icy guilt, the voice that sounded like my mother, tried to whisper in my ear, "You're a monster. You're selfish. You're abandoning them." I stopped. I closed my eyes. I pictured the table at Sabrina's house, the one that was full. Then I pictured the small table on the overnight train, the one I had just paid for, the one with 2 seats. I said the words out loud, to the quiet, dark apartment. If they don't save a seat, I will set my own table. Christmas morning, the hotel lobby was a cathedral of quiet, festive magic. A 20-foot tree glittered with white lights, its pine scent mixing with the rich aroma of coffee from the brunch service just setting up. Nora was standing mesmerized by a grand, multi-layered gingerbread village, her nose almost touching the protective glass. She was wearing her new red headphones, not to block out noise, but just because she loved them. I was sipping a truly excellent latte, the first I'd had in recent memory that wasn't from a hospital vending machine. I felt a sense of peace so profound it was almost disorienting. We were safe. We were invisible. My phone, tucked deep in my purse, was on its fortress setting, do not disturb, with only the hospital and Nora's school allowed to penetrate. But my silence had only made them resourceful. I glanced at my phone to check the time. The lock screen was a solid wall of red-badged notifications, dozens of missed calls, all silenced, dozens of texts, all muted, but they had found a new way in. A voicemail, not from a blocked number, but from my Aunt Clara, my mother's sister, who I hadn't spoken to in 6 months. My blood ran cold. The peace evaporated. I had a sudden, terrible vision of a real emergency, of me ignoring the call, of being wrong about everything. I walked away from Nora, my heart hammering. I pressed the play icon. Aunt Clara's voice was a hysterical, weeping shriek. "Grace, oh my God. Grace, you have to pick up. It's your mother. She collapsed. We're at St. Jude's. She was making the gravy and she just fell. It's her heart. She's asking for you. You have to come home right now." The phone slipped in my hand. The what if, the primal, childish terror. What if I am the monster? What if my mother is dying, and I am in New York over a grudge? I was a nurse. I was a caregiver. The entire weight of my identity, my training, my purpose, crashed down on me. I was supposed to fix this. I gripped the marble railing of the lobby staircase. Breathe. Assess. Do not react. Diagnose. I did not call my aunt back. I did not call my father. I pulled up my contacts and called the St. Jude's Emergency Department, my old stomping ground. A charge nurse I knew. Beth picked up on the third ring. "Ed, this is Beth." "Beth, it's Grace. Grace Whitlow. I know you're slammed. I have a really strange question." "Grace, Merry Christmas. What's up? I heard you were off." I got a call. My mother, Marjorie Whitlow. Is she there? I was told she was admitted. Cardiac arrest." My voice was shaking, but it was steady. Beth was silent for a moment. I heard her typing. "Whitlow? Marjorie? No, not in the ED, not in the system. Let me check the main hospital census." More typing. "Nope, no patient by that name in the building. Grace, not today, not yesterday. Is this some kind of sick joke?" The relief was so sudden, so cold, that my knees buckled. It was followed by a white-hot rage that was almost blinding. A sick joke, yes, that is exactly what it was. A fabricated medical crisis. A lie designed to weaponize my training and my compassion against me, to trick me into abandoning my daughter and my boundaries on Christmas morning. "Thank you, Beth," I said, my voice dead calm. "You just confirmed everything. I owe you one. Merry Christmas." I hung up. I was no longer a terrified daughter. I was a case manager. This was not a family. This was a tactical problem. I took a screenshot of the call from Aunt Clara. I took a screenshot of my phone's call log, showing no call from St. Jude's. I opened my email. I forwarded the screenshots to Dr. Rowan, my new therapist, the one I had spoken to only once. My message was pure clinical prose. Subject: FW, escalation as predicted. Dr. Rowan, documentation for our file. Received a manufactured crisis notification at 8:17 this morning via extended family. Patient, Marjorie Whitlow, allegedly suffered a cardiac event. I have just verified with the hospital in question. It was a fabrication. This is the emergency we discussed, designed to override all boundaries. Proceeding as planned. Grace Whitlow. I hit send. It was a case note. I was logging the symptoms of a diseased system. And then, as if they sensed their first missile had been disarmed, the secondary barrage began. My phone began to vibrate, a relentless, furious buzzing from numbers I hadn't even blocked yet. Cousins, old family friends, the flying monkeys. A text from a cousin in Oregon. "Grace, I am disgusted. Your mother is in the hospital, and you're posting pictures? You are heartless. A text from one of Sabrina's bridesmaids. Your sister is worried sick. This isn't about you. This is about family. You are tearing them apart. A text from my father's golf buddy. Dean is a wreck. You need to call your parents. Tradition is all we have. And then, the one that stopped my heart. Nora needs her grandmother. How dare you keep that child from her family? You are cruel. This was the guilt triangulation. This was the smear campaign. I was no longer just ungrateful. I was heartless, cruel, unstable. I blocked them all, one by one, and then the specialist deployed. A new email appeared, bypassing my filters. This one was from Sabrina. It was not a rambling, emotional text. It was a cold, sharp, legal threat. Subject: your daughter's welfare. Grace, your holiday has been noted. Your public outburst at the hospital, coupled with your refusal to communicate and your erratic behavior, has given the entire family significant and serious cause for concern regarding your mental stability. We are worried about your fitness to adequately care for a high-needs child. If you do not return to Cleveland immediately to discuss this, we will be forced to explore all legal options. I have already consulted with a family law attorney. I will not hesitate to contact Nora's school and the appropriate state authorities in New York to file a formal welfare concern. This is not a threat. It is a promise. We are only thinking of Nora. I had to sit down. I sat on the plush carpet of the hotel lobby, my back against a pillar, my blood roaring in my ears. She was threatening to take my daughter. She was using Nora's autism, the very thing they despised, as a weapon. My erratic behavior was me standing still in a hospital lobby while my mother screamed at me. My refusal to communicate was my boundary. This was the kill shot. This was the nuclear option. They were threatening to burn my entire world to the ground because I refused to cook them a steak. And as I was trying to breathe, to fight off the black, paralyzing panic, a voicemail notification popped up. My father. I pressed play, my hand shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone. His voice was not angry. It was worse. It was the voice of the disappointed, reasonable, weary patriarch. Gracie, kiddo, this has gone too far. Your mother is heartbroken. Your sister is she's worried sick. We're all worried. You're not thinking clearly. Haven't you punished us enough? This is Christmas. For God's sake, just come home. Please, stop all this. We can fix it. Just come home. The manipulation was so layered, so perfect. It was almost beautiful. The case note in my head wrote itself. Patient. Dean. Tactic. Role reversal guilt. He positions himself as the peacemaker, the victim of my punishment. He allies with the primary abuser, Marjorie, and the primary enforcer, Sabrina. While framing my boundary as the source of the conflict, he completely ignores the initial offense. He demands I fix the pain that was caused by my reaction to their cruelty. I was suffocating. They were attacking my motherhood, my sanity, my loyalty, my job. I looked over at my daughter. She was still at the gingerbread house, her small finger tracing the path of a tiny sugar sleigh. She was safe. She was happy. She was in a world that, for this one morning, made perfect sense to her. They were threatening her to get to me. I stood up. I walked over to her. I sat on the floor beside her. She didn't look up, but she leaned her small body against my side. "Hey, sweetie," I said, my voice thick. "Mom," she whispered, pointing. "The roof is made of cereal." "I see that," I whispered back. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded, still focused. "You know how sometimes people say mean things or tell lies to try and make you do something you don't want to do?" She nodded again. "Yes. And they say it's because they're worried about you or because it's what's best, but it feels bad. It feels mean." She finally turned to look at me, her gaze direct and profoundly intelligent. "Oh," she said, her voice clear and simple. "You mean like Liam in my class?" I blinked. What did Liam do? He told me if I talked about the Japanese Shinkansen trains one more time, he wouldn't be my friend anymore. He said everyone in the class thinks trains are stupid and I'm weird. My heart clenched. What did you do, Nora? She shrugged. A small, simple movement. I told him I like trains, and then I went to the block's corner to play with someone else. I stared at her. I stared at this 8-year-old child who my family had dismissed as high needs, difficult, strange. She had just, in 2 sentences, distilled the entire complex, 34-year history of my family's manipulation and handed me the answer. He told me I was weird, so I went to play with someone else. The threat, I won't be your friend, was Sabrina's threat. We will take your child. Just smaller. The answer was the same. You don't stand there and argue. You don't try to convince Liam that trains are cool. You don't apologize for liking trains. You just go play with someone else. You are the smartest person I know. Nora Whitlow, I said. I pulled her into a hug, burying my face in her hair. She smelled like hotel soap and sugar. She was my anchor. She was my truth. The panic was gone. The rage was gone. All that was left was cold, hard clarity. I let her go. I pulled out my laptop. Right there on the floor of the hotel lobby, I opened my private blog, the one called Our Small Table. I wrote a new post. Title, The Answer. They played the emergency card, a false cardiac event. When that failed, they unleashed the family. When that failed, they threatened to take my child, citing my instability as I protect her from their concern. They are angry because I refused to cook a meal for a table that had no seat for her. I asked Nora what to do. She said, "A boy told me he wouldn't be my friend if I kept talking about trains, so I went to play with someone else. If they won't set a seat for her, we are not just building a new table, we are closing theirs, for good." I closed the blog. I opened my email. I pulled up the draft I had written, the one with the subject line, Conditions for Future Contact. I attached the family ledger spreadsheet. I attached the screenshot of the no room text. I attached the screenshot of my mother's post-security ejection shopping list. And then, with grim satisfaction, I attached the screenshot of Sabrina's email threatening my child. I hit Schedule Send, not for today, for tomorrow, December 26th, Boxing Day, a day for cleaning up the wreckage. Finally, I opened my boundary suitcase folder. I had a plan for the lawyer. I had a plan for the authorities. Sabrina was a fool. She thought a welfare check was a trump card. But I was a nurse. I lived by documentation. I created a new file. Welfare check defense. 1. A scanned copy of Nora's most recent, glowing report from her developmental therapist. 2. A letter of support and character reference from her school counselor. 3. A copy of my own spotless employment record and recent performance review from Dr. Alvarez. 4. A copy of our confirmed prepaid hotel and train reservations. 5. The entire family ledger file, proving a documented pattern of harassment and financial exploitation. If they knocked on my door, they would not find an unstable mother. They would find an organized, prepared professional who was protecting her child from a documented, malicious, and harassing family. I closed the laptop. "Okay, sweetie," I said, my voice clear and bright. "I'm starving. Let's go find our table." The Cleveland train station at night was a cavern of cold shadows and echoed announcements. It was the opposite of the festive, curated world my family was building in the suburbs. Here, it was just people in heavy coats, luggage with broken wheels, and the smell of diesel and damp wool. Nora was vibrating with an excitement so pure it was almost painful to watch. She clutched her new sketchpad to her chest, her red headphones on but not playing music, just dampening the cavernous noise. She was taking it all in, the cast-iron beams, the old-fashioned schedule board, the rumble of trains arriving deep beneath our feet. "Mom," she whispered, her voice loud in the relative quiet of her headphones. "It's the Capital Limited. It has a Viewliner car." "I know, sweetie," I said, my own heart thudding with a different kind of energy. a mix of terror and giddy, unbelievable freedom. We boarded. Our car was warm and smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner and coffee. A conductor, an older man with a kind, weathered face and a crisp uniform, took our tickets. He looked at Nora, who was flapping her hands at her sides, her whole body wiggling. My mother's voice was in my ear. "Grace, make her stop that. People are staring." I tensed, my hand instinctively moving to touch Nora's arm, to quiet her. But the conductor just smiled. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. With a few deft, practiced movements, he unfolded it into a simple origami bell. "For the excited passenger," he said, his voice a low, gentle rumble. He held it out to Nora. "Welcome aboard, young lady. We're happy to have you." Nora's flapping stopped. She took the bell, her eyes wide as saucers. She stared at it, her fingers tracing the sharp paper folds. She looked up at him, and for the first time all night, she pulled her headphones down. "Thank you," she said, her voice clear and small. "It's a bell, like from a train." "That's right," he said, winking at her. "You have a good trip now." He moved on. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my throat thick. It was the single kindest, most perceptive act from a stranger I had ever witnessed. He hadn't seen a problem. He hadn't seen strange. He had seen excitement, and he had met it with a gift. We found our small sleeper compartment. It was tiny, perfect, a miniature world just for us. As I stowed our bags, I felt the train give a deep, metallic groan, a lurch, and then motion. Smooth, gathering, undeniable motion. I sat down and pulled up the shade. The lights of the station platform, the faces of people waiting, slid past the window. Then faster. We were moving. We were out of the station. I watched the familiar, bleak skyline of Cleveland recede, the illuminated clock tower of our old courthouse, the skeletal bridges over the frozen river. I imagined my mother's kitchen, the one I had stocked for 12 years. I imagined the gleaming, unused prime rib in the refrigerator. I imagined the anger, the confusion, the storm of furious texts I was not receiving. They were all back there, frozen in their perfect, angry tableau, and I was moving. I was gliding away from them at 80 miles per hour, wrapped in steel and warm yellow light. I felt like I had just stepped out of a burning building, taking my first lungful of clean, cold air. I turned from the window. Nora had already set up her world. She had her sketchbook open, her tin of pencils unrolled. She was meticulously drawing the interior of the compartment, her red headphones back on, humming her low, happy hum. I took out my phone. I had one final task. I went to my social media, the one Sabrina had weaponized. I opened my feed, saw her post again, the one about sacred traditions. I created a new post. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't write a long, defensive caption. I just attached the selfie I had taken in the dressing room, the one of me in the new green sweater, my eyes bright, and Nora making her silly, joyful face beside me. My caption was 6 words, having a wonderful holiday with my girl. I hit post. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't an explanation. It was a fact. It was my truth, simple and bright, a shield against their dark, complicated narrative of my instability. I sat back, watching the dark, snowy fields of Ohio blur past. I didn't look at my phone again for an hour. When I did, I glanced at Nora. She had finished her drawing of the compartment. She was starting a new one. It was a drawing of a Christmas tree. Next to it, she drew 2 stick figures, one tall, one small. They were holding hands. Around them, she drew snowflakes, and at the top, in her careful, deliberate, 8-year-old printing, she wrote 2 words. Real Christmas. I had to look away, my eyes burning, a child. She knew. She had felt the tension, the obligation, the cold, hollow performance of every other Christmas. This, to her, a cramped train car, a paper bell, her mother present and not frantic. This was the real thing. We slept. I slept a deep, dreamless sleep. the first in a decade that wasn't poisoned by the dread of an upcoming family event. We woke to the pale, gray light of a new world. The landscape outside was no longer flat Ohio fields. It was the dense, frosted hills of Pennsylvania, then the industrial sprawl of New Jersey, and then New York. The arrival was a symphony of chaos, but it was a functional chaos. Grand Central Station was a soaring, celestial masterpiece, its ceiling a map of the stars. It was loud, it was crowded, it was overwhelming, but Nora, with her red headphones on, was transfixed. She held my hand, her other hand flapping, but her eyes were wide with wonder, not fear. We took a cab to the hotel, and this was the moment I had dreaded, the check-in, the moment of transition, of judgment from strangers. We walked into the lobby, the one I had seen online. It was just as grand as the pictures. The 20-foot tree, the scent of pine and polish. Nora let go of my hand and did a full, spinning jump, her arms out, her excitement at the glittering lights too much to contain. The woman at the front desk, elegant in a black blazer, looked up. I tensed. I opened my mouth, the old, tired apology already on my lips. "I'm so sorry. She's..." But the woman just smiled, a genuine, warm, professional smile. She didn't look at Nora with pity, or annoyance, or condescension. She looked at me. "Welcome to New York," she said, her voice warm. "Checking in?" "Yes," I said, my voice unsteady. "Whitlow, Grace Whitlow." "Wonderful," she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "We have your reservation right here. A holiday brunch for 2. We are so glad to have you." Nora, hearing the word brunch, ran up to the desk and leaned over the marble. "Are there pancakes?" she demanded, her voice loud. The woman didn't shush her. She didn't look at me to handle her. She leaned forward, as if sharing a secret. "We have the best pancakes in the city," she whispered, "with maple syrup from a farm in Vermont." "Wow," Nora breathed. I was reeling. I was in a state of profound shock. The absence of judgment, the default setting of simple human acceptance, felt more revolutionary than the train ride itself. This, I realized, was what it felt like to not be the family with the problem. This was just normal. We got to our room. It was beautiful, high ceilings, a huge window overlooking the city, 2 soft beds. I sat on the edge of one, my purse falling to the floor, and just breathed. I checked my phone. The fortress had held. Dozens of notifications, all silenced, but one message, from Tiana, had made it through my allowed list. I opened it. Subject, FYI, wall holding. "Grace, just a heads up. Marjorie called the unit again, at 6 a.m., on Christmas. Said you were missing and endangered. Tried to file a report. I told her, per hospital protocol, that all non-patient contact was being routed through administration and that we could not confirm or deny any employee's status." She screamed. I hung up. Security now has her picture at the front desk. Have a real holiday. Gee, you've earned it. We've got the fort. My new community, my real family, they had my back. That night, in the quiet, high-altitude dark of our hotel room, with the city lights glittering like a fallen constellation below, I opened my journal. I wrote down the conductor's paper bell. I wrote down Nora's drawing. I wrote down the hotel clerk's smile. I looked at the words, the threats from Sabrina, the fake heart attack from my mother, the guilt trip from my father, and then the simple, profound kindness of strangers. I wrote one final sentence. We are not the problem. We were never the problem. We were just the ones who were telling the truth. Nora, in her dinosaur pajamas, was already in her bed, her new sketch pad propped on her knees. She was drawing the view from the window. "Mom," she said, not looking up. "The table, the one that was full." I stilled. "Yes, sweetie? Do we have our own table now?" My throat closed. I went over and sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair. "Yes, baby," I whispered. From now on, we always will. The next morning, I put on my new green sweater. I helped Nora into her holiday dress, a soft, comfortable velvet one, and we went downstairs. The brunch was in a vast ballroom, sunlight streaming through arched windows, a piano playing softly. Crystal chandeliers refracted the light, scattering rainbows on the white tablecloths. A waiter, who looked like he was from a movie, pulled out my chair. We sat, we ate pancakes and pastries and fruit from a silver platter. We drank hot chocolate. Nora talked about the train and the lights and the hotel and the physics of the elevator, and I listened. We laughed. It was a real, easy laugh, a sound I hadn't heard from myself in a long, long time. My phone, sitting on the table, buzzed once, a text from a number I didn't recognize. Another soldier in my mother's army, no doubt, deployed to ruin this moment. I looked at the phone, then I looked at my daughter, her face smeared with chocolate, her eyes bright and alive. I picked up the phone, I pressed and held the side button. I slid my finger across the screen. Power off. The phone went dark, the screen went black. The only sounds left were the clinking of my spoon against a porcelain cup, the distant piano, and my daughter's happy, joyful, unfiltered laughter. It was December 26th, Boxing Day, the traditional day for cleaning up the wreckage of Christmas. I woke up on my own terms, in the quiet, sunlit hotel room. The phone, which I had powered back on, was quiet. The fortress had held. I took Nora down to the hotel cafe for breakfast. She ate pancakes, and I drank a quiet cup of coffee. I did not check my email. I did not look for the fight. For the first time, I was letting the war come to me, on my schedule. At 10 in the morning, back in our room, I sat down at the small desk by the window. I opened my laptop. It was time. The email draft I had prepared was sitting, waiting. It was cold. It was clinical. It was not an emotional plea from a wounded daughter. It was a list of terms and conditions from a party that had been wronged. I added Marjorie, Dean, and Sabrina to the to line. The subject was simple: conditions for future contact. I reread the body of the text. It was the most honest and the most brutal thing I had ever written. To all parties, it began. My attempts to establish a private, personal boundary regarding Christmas have been met with a series of escalating, manipulative, and harassing actions. This includes, but is not limited to, a public confrontation at my place of work, a coordinated smear campaign via extended family, a fabricated medical emergency designed to lure me from my child, and a direct threat against my parental rights by Sabrina. This email is not an opening for negotiation. It is a statement of fact and a list of non-negotiable terms for any potential future relationship. I have attached 2 documents for your review. Attachment A is titled The Family Ledger. It is a spreadsheet itemizing the last 12 months of unreimbursed expenses, gifts, and uncompensated labor I have provided to this family. The total, for your records, is $11,740. This is a conservative estimate. Attachment B is titled The Pattern. It is a PDF file containing screenshots of key communications. This includes the initial text message declaring Nora and I were not welcome, but my labor was. It includes Marjorie's shopping list, sent immediately after she was escorted from my hospital by security. It includes Sabrina's social media posts, and it includes Sabrina's email from yesterday, threatening to contact state authorities and file a welfare check based on manufactured concerns for my stability. My child's personal information has been redacted. My instability is a direct result of your collective behavior. My refusal to communicate is a boundary. You have mistaken a clinical boundary for a personal attack, and you have responded with overwhelming force. Therefore, should any of you wish to have a relationship with me or my daughter in the future, the following conditions must be met. A full written acknowledgement from each of you, individually, of the behaviors detailed in Attachment B. 2. A permanent cessation of all requests for non-reciprocal financial material or labor-based support. My role as the family chef, ATM, and crisis manager is terminated, effective immediately. 3. The immediate, unconditional, and respectful inclusion of Nora. Exactly as she is, any future discussion of curing her, fixing her, or teaching her to be polite will result in immediate and permanent termination of contact. 4. An agreement from all parties to attend professionally led family therapy with a specialist in narcissistic family systems to address these dynamics. This is not optional. Your choice of therapist must be approved by me. Until these terms are met, there will be no contact. All phone numbers will remain blocked. All future communication, should you choose to accept these terms, will be conducted only via this email address. This ensures a clear, permanent, and legal record of all interactions. As I have stated, Nora and I are not attending any family functions. We have our own plans. This decision is final and not open for discussion. I finished reading. My heart was calm. My hand was steady. I clicked Attach. I uploaded the family ledger spreadsheet. I uploaded the pattern PDF. I hit Send. The sound of the email departing was almost silent, just a faint whoosh. It felt like dropping a stone into a deep, dark well. I took a deep breath. I opened my secure cloud drive. I created a new, Final folder. Family Ledger. Final. I saved a copy of the sent email. I saved the attachments. I saved Dr. Alvarez's letter of support. I saved Nora's school records. I saved everything. I closed the file and encrypted the archive. The case was closed. I did not sit and wait for the explosion. I closed my laptop. But an hour later, I was curious. I checked my personal email on my phone. Dr. Rowan, my therapist, had already replied to my case note from yesterday. Her response was short, and it was the validation I did not know I needed. Grace, her email read, the language in your draft is model boundary language. It is factual, non-accusatory, and sets firm, clear, actionable terms. It places the onus of repair directly on the offending parties, which is exactly correct. You are not attacking their character. You are identifying their behavior. You have handled this with clinical precision. Stay the course. I took a screenshot of that, too, and I saved it. I had one final test for myself. I opened my social media app. My finger hovered. I could post the ledger. I could post Sabrina's threat. I could light up our entire social circle, vindicate myself, and burn their reputations to the ground. The temptation was strong, a hot, bitter taste in the back of my throat. But I looked at Sabrina's post about tradition. It now looked hollow, pathetic, a desperate piece of propaganda. My colleagues had commented on my selfie of me and Nora. Have the best time. You deserve this. A public war was what they wanted. It was a stage where they could perform their victimhood. I was not a brawler. I was a clinician. I refused to give them the stage. This was a legal action, not a public drama. I logged out. We spent the afternoon in the hotel. I left my laptop open on the desk, the volume on. I was waiting for the counter-assault, the email from Sabrina's lawyer, the all caps, hysterical reply from Marjorie, the police at my door. Nothing. The silence was absolute. It was deafening. I knew what this silence was. This was not surrender. This was a crisis meeting. This was the sound of Sabrina, the lawyer, reading my documented evidence and realizing, for the first time, that I had a case. I had receipts. I had her written threat. I had documentation. They were not dealing with hysterical, emotional Gracie. They were dealing with Nurse Whitlow, the one who documents everything, the one who had just built an ironclad legal file. They were in a room somewhere in Cleveland, panicking. They were strategizing. Then, late in the afternoon, as the New York sky turned a deep, bruised purple, a single notification pinged my inbox. It was not from Sabrina. It was not from Marjorie. It was from my father, from his personal private email account, the one I had not known he had. The subject line was empty. The message contained only 2 lines. I have read your email and the attachments. I need time to think. I stared at it until the words blurred. This was not an apology. It was not an agreement. It was not accountability. But it was the first independent thought I had ever received from him in writing. It was not, "Your mother is upset." It was not, "You are wrong." It was, "I need time." It was the first time he had ever, in 34 years, separated his voice from hers. It was a hairline fracture in the foundation of their united front. I felt something, not forgiveness, but a strange, hollow pity. He was a man waking up from a 30-year trance, and I did not know if he would survive the light. I closed the laptop. I had done the work. I had stated my terms. The ball was no longer in my court. It was not my problem to solve, or manage, or fix. Nora, who had been patiently building a complex train station out of hotel pillows and room service menus, looked up. "Mom?" The man at the front desk said there is a giant model train in the Great Hall, the one from the pamphlet. He said it goes through a sugar village. Can we go see it? Now? I looked at the closed laptop, the silent battlefield, the digital evidence of my shattered family. I could sit here all day, all week, waiting for their next move, analyzing my father's 2 lines, bracing for Sabrina's counterattack. Or I could go see a train. A slow smile spread across my face. I stood up and stretched, the tension finally leaving my shoulders. I was not a plaintiff. I was not a defendant. I was not a problem. I was a mother, on vacation with her daughter. "You know what, sweetie?" I said, reaching for my new green sweater. "That is the best idea you've had all day. Let's go." I took her small, warm hand in mine. We walked out of the quiet hotel room, leaving the silent war behind us, choosing the sound of clicking, model railways, and my daughter's quiet hum over the moral victory of a battle I had already, finally, won, 200 miles away, in Cleveland. The stage was being set. I knew my family's playbook, the traditional Christmas, the one I had funded and fueled for 12 years, could not be canceled, not with Cole's parents. The prestigious Dallas contingent, in the guest room. The show must go on. The problem, I knew, was the food. They could not replicate my cooking, not the prime rib, not the gluten-free desserts, not the 7-fish feast. They would be forced to buy it, to have high-end catering delivered, and to pass it off as my own. The entire performance hinged on one simple lie. Why isn't Grace here? I woke up in New York to a different kind of buzz. My phone, which I had powered back on, lit up. But it was not an attack. It was a video message from Tiana and the night crew, sent to my allowed list. I pressed play. It was a shaky video from the nurses' station. Tiana wearing a pair of reindeer antlers. The rest of the crew waving from behind their charts. They held up a hand-drawn sign. "Happy Rails Mas, Grace and Nora, holding the fort. We love you." I laughed. A real, full laugh. This was my community, my real one. Then, a new message popped up. A text from a number I did not recognize. "Grace, this is your cousin Sarah, from Akron. We haven't talked in years. I don't know if I should be doing this, but I'm on the Whitlow extended text chain, and I think Sabrina just sent this to the wrong group. She meant it for just your mom and dad. I always thought they were hard on you. I thought you should see this." Attached was a screenshot, a text message from Sabrina, sent not 3 minutes ago. My fingers were cold as I opened it. The text read, "Mom, stop panicking about the food. Just stick to the script. Tell the Harringtons that Grace was called in for a critical shift at the hospital. A Christmas Day code blue. It makes her look heroic, and it makes us look supportive. They'll buy it. Just get them to the table." I took a deep, steadying breath. I saved the screenshot. I forwarded it to my secure Family Ledger final folder. It was no longer an assumption. It was a conspiracy. Active, documented, and now proven. I picked up the hotel room phone and dialed the concierge. "Concierge, this is Grace Whitlow in room 1205. "Good morning, Ms. Whitlow. How may I assist you?" "I'd like to confirm my Christmas Day brunch reservation. For 2, at 11. "Yes, I have that right here. Whitlow, party of 2. I'd like to add a note to the reservation, if I could, a special request. Of course. Please make the note read, 2 seats, 1 table, no chairs available for anyone who insults or excludes a child. There was a half-second of silence, the professional pause of a high-end service employee processing an unusual, but clear, instruction. Of course, Ms. Whitlow. 2 seats, 1 table. We will see you at 11. I hung up. The stage in New York was now also set. In Cleveland, the time bomb was beginning to tick. Cole's parents, Dr. and Dr. Harrington, were exactly what my family feared. Quiet, intelligent, and observant. They were, as I would later learn, both practicing child psychologists who specialized in neurodiversity and family systems. They had arrived with gifts, not just for Sabrina and my parents, but with a beautifully wrapped, sensory-friendly gift bag for Nora. We are so looking forward to meeting her, Dr. Harrington, Cole's mother, had said with a warm, genuine smile. Sabrina has told us she's a very special girl. Sabrina, trapped, had been forced to deploy the lie early. Oh, you know Grace, she had said, her voice dripping with false sisterly pride. A complete hero, she got called in, a terrible code blue at the hospital, on Christmas Day. She was just devastated she couldn't be here. The Harringtons had offered their sympathies, but later, as Cole and Sabrina were showing them the house, Cole needed to check something on his email. His phone was charging. He borrowed Sabrina's iPad, the one that was linked to all her accounts, the one she'd left on her desk. He opened her mail app, and there it was, at the top of her inbox. My email. Subject: Conditions for future contact. He had frozen. He had clicked it. He was not meant to see it, but he had. He read my introduction. He read my 4 non-negotiable terms. And then he saw the attachments. He couldn't open them. They were linked to my original email, not this forwarded copy, but he saw the file names. Attachment A, Family Ledger, PDF. Attachment B, the pattern, text, email, and legal threats, PDF. He read the summary again. A direct threat against my parental rights by Sabrina. A fabricated medical emergency. No room for Nora. $11,740. He, a man whose entire life had been shaped by the calm, rational, empathetic logic of his parents, was marrying into a family that threatened to take a special needs child from her mother because she had been uninvited from a dinner party. He closed the iPad, his blood running cold. Back in New York, I was in the hotel business center. I was printing. Not the whole ledger, just a 1-page summary. The timeline of exploitation, from my 12th birthday cake to Sabrina's legal threat. I folded it neatly and slid it into a clean white hotel envelope. This was my new Boundary suitcase. It was now small enough to fit in my purse, ready for the welfare check Sabrina had promised. As I walked back to the room, my cell phone, the one still on its fortress setting, rang, an unknown number, not a local Cleveland number, a New York prefix. I answered, my voice clinical. Grace Whitlow. Grace, this is Cole. I stopped in the hallway. I said nothing. Sabrina's fiancé, he added, his voice low, fast, and terrified. Please, I'm so sorry. I'm calling from my burner phone. I'm in her guest room. I saw the email, the one you sent them. I see, I said. My voice was flat. I didn't know, he said, the words tumbling out. I swear to God, I had no idea. She told us she said you were on a shift, a code blue. That is the lie she put in writing this morning, I said, a simple statement of fact. He cursed, a low, sharp sound. Listen, my parents, they're child psychologists. They work with autistic kids. It's their entire lives. They were excited to meet Nora. He sounded choked. What she wrote, the things you said she did, I believe you, Grace. If I ever meet Nora, what's the right way to talk to her? I don't want to be like them. How do I get it right? The anger that had been simmering in my chest for weeks did not fade, but it shifted. He was not defending his fiancée. He was not attacking me. He was asking for the user manual. She loves trains, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. The Japanese Shinkansen, specifically, ask her about maglev. Do not tell her the topic is boring. Do not demand she make eye contact with you, and do not touch her, ever, without asking her permission first. There was a heavy silence. A social story, he whispered, using the clinical term. And sensory rules. Of course. Thank you. I have to go. The line clicked dead. The bomb was not only planted, the detonator was now in my camp. As I put my key in my hotel room door, the phone inside, the hotel room phone, began to ring. It was a shrill, demanding sound. I ran and picked it up. Hello? One moment, please. Connecting a call for Ms. Grace Whitlow. Before I could say no, the line clicked, and then my mother's voice, a screech of pure, unfiltered rage. Grace, I know you're in there. The front desk said you were. You are making a fool of this family. Cole's parents are here. They are asking about you. They brought Nora a gift. You have to appear. You have to come down here and fix this. You are making us lose face. You get back to Cleveland now. The sheer, breathtaking entitlement of it, the demand that I abandon my child, on a trip I paid for, and travel 200 miles to appear as a prop in her lie. Operator, I said, my voice like Arctic ice. The operator, who had clearly been listening, cut in. Yes, Ms. Whitlow? My mother is not a guest. She is not a resident. She is not authorized to contact this room. Please log this call as harassment. Then, block this number and any other number associated with the name Whitlow from ever being put through to my room again. Grace, you will not hang up on me. You will listen to me. I am your mother. Yes, Ms. Whitlow, the operator said, her voice calm. Right away. The line went dead. I stood there, the receiver in my hand. The final assault had failed. The clock on the wall said 10:50. It was time. In Cleveland, the lie was being served. The guests were seated at Sabrina's perfect 14-person table. The catered prime rib was being passed off as my family-eyed recipe. The atmosphere was brittle, false, thick with unspoken tension. Cole was staring at his plate. His parents were making polite, observant conversation, their professional eyes missing nothing. The masks were on. In New York, I took off my robe. I put on my new green sweater. I helped Nora into her velvet dress. I put her paper bell in her small pocket. Are we going to our table now, Mom? She asked. We are, I said. We walked out of the room, hand in hand. We went down the elevator and across the glittering, magnificent lobby. The sound of a live piano and quiet laughter washed over us. The maitre d', a man in a perfect tuxedo, approached us. He did not look at Nora's headphones. He did not look at her fidgeting hands. He smiled. Good morning, he said. Party of 2? Yes, I said. Whitlow, reservation for 11. He looked down at his book. He nodded, a small, knowing smile touching his lips. Ah, yes, Ms. Whitlow, your table. 2 seats, 1 table. We have the perfect spot for you, right by the window. Please, follow me. The 2 parties had begun. One, a feast of lies. The other, a table for 2. And for the first time in my life, I was sitting at the one that was real, in Cleveland. The performance was underway. The scene at Sabrina's house was a masterpiece of denial. The air brittle with forced cheer. The catered prime rib, reheated and artfully arranged on my mother's silver platter. Sat on the buffet. The Harringtons, Cole's parents, were seated at the gleaming 14-person table, sipping wine. My father, Dean, looked pale. My mother, Marjorie, was in her element, holding court, her voice bright and false. It is just terrible, Marjorie was saying. her hand pressed to her chest. "Our Grace, she's a hero, truly, a critical care nurse. She was called in at the last minute, a terrible code blue, right on Christmas morning. She was just devastated to miss you. But duty calls." Sabrina nodded, her face a mask of solemn agreement. "She works so hard. We're just so proud of her." Dr. Harrington, Cole's mother, smiled politely. She was a woman with kind, deeply intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "That is admirable," she said, her voice smooth. "We were so looking forward to meeting her, and her daughter, Nora. Cole told us she's fascinated by trains. We actually brought a small gift for her." Marjorie's smile tightened by a millimeter. "Oh, yes, sweet Nora. Well, you understand. With Grace's shift, it was impossible. Too much disruption for the child." A fork clattered loudly onto a plate. It was Cole. He had been staring at his empty plate, his jaw tight, his knuckles white. "That's a lie," he said. The room went utterly, profoundly silent. The only sound was the faint tink of an icicle against the window pane. "What did you say, Cole?" Sabrina asked, her voice a dangerous, low hiss. Cole looked up, not at his fiancée, but at his parents. "They're lying. All of it. Grace isn't on a shift. She's in New York with Nora. She's in New York because they told her there was no room for her and her autistic daughter at this table." Marjorie gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "That is not true. Cole, how could you? She's not well. She's unstable." "Unstable?" Cole's voice was shaking with a cold, controlled rage. "I saw the email. The one you didn't know I saw. The one where you, Sabrina, threatened to call Child Protective Services on her? To take her daughter away? Because she refused to cook for you?" Sabrina's face, which had been pale, flushed a dark, ugly red. "You had no right to read that. That is a private family matter." "My parents," Cole said, his voice cutting through her panic like a scalpel, "are child psychologists. They have spent their entire careers advocating for neurodivergent children. They are specialists in family systems and ethical care." He turned to his mother. "Mom? Dad? What are your professional thoughts on a family that weaponizes a child's autism to enforce a demand for a holiday meal?" Dr. Harrington, Cole's mother, looked at Marjorie. Her kind expression was gone, replaced by a look of cold, clinical assessment. "A question. Marjorie, purely professional. In what scenario do you find it acceptable to exclude a child from a family gathering based on her disability?" It was not an exclusion," Marjorie stammered. "It was a matter of space. The table. The new chairs." "A lie," Cole repeated. "I saw the receipts, too. The family ledger. The $11,000 she spent on you this year." My father, Dean, had not moved. He was staring at his hands, his face gray. He had heard the call with the hotel. He had seen my email. He had seen the proof. And now, at his own table, he did not defend his wife. He did not defend his daughter. He just sat there, a hollow man, his silence the most damning confession of all. Dr. Harrington, Cole's father, who had been silent until now, slowly, deliberately, placed his linen napkin on the table. "Sabrina," he said, his voice quiet but absolute, "our firm provides psychological consultations for the Dallas family court system. I cannot, in good conscience, welcome an individual into my family who would engage in such profound, malicious, and documented emotional blackmail. We cannot be associated with this." He stood up. His wife stood up. "Cole," his mother said, "please get our coats and the gift we brought for Nora." Cole stood, shoving his chair back so hard it almost toppled. He grabbed the small, brightly wrapped gift from the sideboard. "We will not be dining with people who would banish a child and then lie about it," Dr. Harrington said to the room. "The engagement is off. We are leaving." They walked out of the dining room. The front door opened, letting in a blast of frigid Cleveland air, and then it closed, the click of the lock echoing in the silent, food-filled room. Marjorie's hand was clamped on the back of her chair. Her grip so tight her fingers were bloodless. Her face was a mask of stone. Sabrina. Her perfect future. Her wealthy Dallas connection. Her entire life's performance, evaporating in front of her. She looked at the ruined prime rib. She looked at her father's empty face, and she let out a single, ugly, gasping sob. At that exact moment, in a sun-drenched ballroom in New York, the maitre d' was approaching my table. Nora was happily coloring on her menu. I was sipping my tea, the warmth spreading through my chest. The pianist was playing a soft, gentle melody. The maitre d' was carrying a single, elegant, empty dining chair. He walked to our small two-person table and placed it next to me, angling it slightly toward us, as if for an honored, expected guest. I looked up, confused. "I'm sorry," I said. We're not waiting for anyone else." He smiled, a small, knowing, professional smile. He leaned in just a fraction. "From the house, madam," he said, his voice low. "A note was added to your reservation. It was a request to set a place for anyone who used to not have a place. We are happy to accommodate." I stared at the chair. It was a symbol, a physical space for the ghost I had been. In my purse, I could feel the stiff edge of the white envelope, the one holding the one-page timeline of my family's crimes. I had brought it, just in case Sabrina's threat was real, in case the police showed up. I realized I didn't need it. I would never need it. The truth was its own agent. The message had been delivered. A waiter approached, holding a cordless hotel phone. "Ms. Whitlow? My apologies for the interruption. A call from the front desk. A Mr. Dean Whitlow. He insists it is an emergency." I looked at Nora. She was humming, focused on her drawing. I looked at the empty chair. I took the phone. "This is Grace," I said. His voice was a ghost, a reedy, broken whisper, a sound I had never heard. "Gracie, the Harringtons, they left, Cole left, they walked out," he was crying. "Sabrina, your mother, the whole thing it's ruined." He was waiting for me to say, "Oh, Dad, that's awful." He was waiting for me to come home. He was waiting for me to take the blame, to smooth it over, to cook another meal, to fix what they had shattered. I let the silence stretch. I watched a snowflake melt on the great window. "I have 2 things to say," I said. My voice was not cold. It was not angry. It was just clear, like a bell. 1. You will respect Nora, or this silence is permanent. 2. I am not cooking. I am not coming home. And I am not paying for your mistakes ever again. The line was dead quiet. I could hear his thin, shuddering breath from 200 miles away. I could hear the ruin of his house, the wreckage of the lie. He whispered. "I understand." The line clicked dead. He had hung up. I placed the receiver back on the waiter's small tray. He bowed and took it away. Another waiter appeared, almost immediately, with a silver pot of tea. "More tea, Miss Whitlow?" "Yes," I said. "Thank you." He poured. Nora, finally looking up from her art, pointed her crayon at the empty chair next to me. "Mom, who is that chair for?" she asked, her voice clear. I looked at the chair. It was not a memorial. It was an invitation. I smiled, and I could feel the expression reach my eyes, which were not crying. "It's for anyone, sweetie," I said, "who is ready to learn how to sit at the table correctly." A small plate of perfect, jewel-like pastry sat between us. I picked up a small, glistening lemon tart. I took a bite. It was sweet, and sharp, and bright. It was the first bite of a holiday meal I had not cooked, paid for, or served in 12 years. Outside, the snow was falling, thin and gentle, dusting the city. Inside, my table was full. It had 2 seats, and it was complete. The empty chair sat beside us, a silent, conditional promise, as I finally, After 34 years, cut the cord. Thank you so much for listening. I'm curious, where in the world are you tuning in from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.